All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jenny Davis. Welcome to Zoom with the Principal. Today, our topic, we're finishing up our talk about the book, The Gift of Failure. We're doing part 3 today. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed talking about this book. And if you've been reading along, great. If you haven't picked up the book, I do recommend picking it up. I think this last part actually has some really great advice on dealing with like how to deal with schools and teachers and things like that. And I think it's interesting for me to read because I'm reading it from the lens of a parent, because of course I am a parent who has to deal with my own children's teachers and schools and, interacting with them. But then also reading it from the lens of an educator, a former teacher, and then what I see in my role as principal, and kind of some things that I wish teachers would handle better, but then also sometimes what I wish parents would handle better when there are conversations with teachers. So let's just dive into our first question. And hopefully I'm just not talking myself the whole time. Parents that are in here, please respond in the chat to help the conversation going. Otherwise, it's just going to be my thoughts the whole time, which I guess could be okay too, if you guys like that. But it's always better if I get some interaction. So parents, please put your thoughts in the chat. Today, that would be really great. So the first question I have is, what is the best case scenario for when it comes to the parent-teacher partnership? And I like this question because I think it really settles in like what is key here is it has to be a partnership. It can't just be just the teacher, just the parent, like they need to be working together. And a lot of times when I see that relationship failing a little bit and not being a good relationship, it's because it's not working as a partnership and like there's head butting. What I find a lot of times in my role is people come in with preconceived notions and their own life experience. I think that's true for everything, right? You come in with your own life experiences. So sometimes, in my role as principal, we have some parents that maybe didn't have the best experience in the school system themselves. And so when they're coming in and they're, having to deal with their child's teacher, a lot of their biases and like bad feelings that they have from their own educational experience can come through. And same thing on the teacher side, where if they've had a bad experience with a parent before, where a parent has come in and like really accused them of stuff and been, kind of unfair and not trusting of that relationship, they can come in with the teacher can have a big chip on their shoulder and not trust the relationship and where the parent's coming from. And so I think a lot of times what can be muddied, like there can be some bad feelings that can muddy that partnership between the teacher and the parent. And so I think what's really important though, and I think the point that the book tries to make with this is that ideally this relationship is positive, that if there's a positive family school relationship, that's like a really vital thing to student success, that the family and the schools working together to meet the needs of the student and they're not butting heads and fighting against each other. And I had an interesting experience just this actually was within this last week. Some of I don't know, because it's actually been a while since I worked there, but before coming to Piedmont as principal, I was the associate principal at Santa Teresa High School, also in Eastside, but on the other side of the district. And Santa Teresa has a reputation of having very difficult parents, and they do. The parents there can be really difficult to deal with, and kind of come in hot and angry and then like stay at that like they just come in first interaction, they're angry. And you just have to be braced for it. And so when I came to Piedmont, I was like, oh my gosh, the parents are so nice at Piedmont. And I still feel that way. I think I feel very blessed in my role as principal that I do believe I have the nicest and most supportive parent community. So thank you all for that, because I feel like the Piedmont community, parent community, is a wonderful, supportive place. And we're very lucky here. So a lot of what I see as problems and stuff that I've dealt with at other times in my career in other schools, I don't see as much of an issue here at Piedmont. But overall, right now, and I know you guys follow the news and are, keep up on stuff. Well, maybe you don't. I don't know how much you keep up on like what's happening in the education world. But this is actually a difficult time to be a teacher. There's a lot of pressures on teachers coming from all different groups. And like, I feel like education has become very politicized in the United States, which is very unfortunate. It puts teachers and educators in a really awkward position. I feel that we're really actually very blessed to be in California, where we don't have a lot of those political pressures, because it can be really difficult. I have a quote that I want to read you guys from the book. Hold on, let me find it. Okay, so this is at the bottom of page 186 and then page 187. And it's talking about how parents, when there's something bad that happens at school, how should parents deal with it? And I like this quote. I thought it was let me read it first, then we can talk about it. When parents step in to defend a child's poor choice or mistake or failure in order to avoid the consequence of that action or performance, they tend to lose sight of the fact that if the student does not have the experience of making mistakes and living and learning with the consequence of that mistake or failure, college may be a very difficult experience thousands of miles away from the security of mom and dad when he eventually has to deal with the experience on his own. Mistakes are opportunities to grow. Failures or unsuccessful attempts are the same, and students need to live through those experiences to develop a toolbox of coping mechanisms to lift them and move them forward. And, what I want to say about that is, high school especially, and, this book kind of goes through the range of all the different levels of schooling, but especially when we're in high school, teenagers make mistakes. They may experiment with things that as parents, we wish they hadn't. They are going to make poor choices with their priorities and how they spend their time. And that this can be to varying degrees. Some teenagers will make more poor choices than others. But I think across the board, as parents, we can't expect that our teenager is never going to make poor choices. And they probably at some point are going to do something at school that we wish they hadn't. It could be that they get caught vaping in the bathroom. It could be that they blew off a project and they didn't do the project and got a really poor grade. But at some point in high school, they're going to make a poor choice. And I think as parents, we shouldn't be like, well, that's okay, that happened, or blame the school, like, the school did something wrong, and just look at it as the opportunity that it is, that it's a chance for them to learn from their mistakes. But part of you have to like really kind of like, it's a mistake, like, and there's consequences to that mistake. So there's punishments, there's a bad grade, maybe they get suspended from school. You at home may have your own punishment. You take away their phone, or you say that they can't go to some event that they wanted to go to. I think that that's, really important. Sometimes as a school, we have an awkward, because what you guys do at home in terms of punishment is what you do at home, and we try not to interfere with that. Sometimes we're definitely in the situation where parents want us as the school to give a more severe punishment, but we have our own guidelines and kind of like what's an appropriate punishment. And so I definitely have had the experience where parents are like, no, you need to punish them more. And we're like, yeah, but that's not what our policy is. So we're not going to do that. So that's sometimes can make, for an awkward conversation. So I felt like in this section of the book, and if those of you that have the book, starting on page, and it's a good 25 pages, but starting on page 187 to page 204, they give some really good, I thought, good advice from, as a parent, how should you deal with the school? And I just thought, and I kind of feel awkward because I am in the role of principal of being like, yes, you should do this. But then I tried to really look at this as a lens of a parent, and as a parent, how I deal with the school. But one thing I wanted to highlight on here, and one of that I see in my role that I wish parents would automatically do, and they don't. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't. And it's on page 201. And it's, if you're concerned with a teacher's actions, talk to that teacher. Resist the temptation to go over the teacher's head to the principal, at least at first. And I can't tell you how many times I have parents that will go directly to me, and because I try to make myself available to parents. Obviously, I have this meeting every Wednesday morning, and I am available to parents. But when you go above the teacher's head and you go directly to me and you haven't tried to talk to the teacher first, that is kind of, it's potentially destroying that relationship with that teacher. Hopefully not that extreme, but it's going to put that teacher's back up and put them on guard, because I evaluate the teacher. So I'm their boss. And so it's kind of like when you're at a store and you have a complaint, like going directly to the manager and asking to speak for the manager, like that. It's like that type of, atmosphere. And like when I think most of the time, if not like 90% of the time, if you go directly to the teacher, it will be worked out without me having to get involved. Now, if you go to the teacher and it isn't getting worked out, well, then definitely come to me. But my ask as principal is to always start with the teacher. If there is something that's not happening right in the class and you have a concern and you're something's not making sense, you don't understand the grade or the assignment or whatever it is, going to the teacher first before coming to me is by far the best thing to do. Now, if that's not working out, the teacher's not responding, you still don't understand, it's still not working out, then come to me. But my ask in my role is to start with the teacher. I don't know if parents have any comments. You guys have been very silent today. Thank you, Sharon Griefully. Thank you. I think you as parents will find that it's good. Like I said, I think most of the time you're going to work it out, and it's going to make for a better, more trusting relationship with the teacher. And you'll be actually more satisfied than if you just came straight to me. Okay, so this next question is about homework. I'm going to read the question. It's actually kind of a long and wordy question. By the way, I didn't write these questions. I found there's this because this is a book that frequently book clubs and they do book studies. And so I found online pre-written book club questions for this book. So I can't take credit for writing these questions. I did pick the questions that I liked, and I didn't write them. Okay, so the next question, if our long-term goals for our kids include developing a growth mindset, autonomy, confidence, mastery, and more comfort around frustration, what are some of the practical steps you can work through your child to help them learn to organize, strategize, and take responsibility for their homework? Let me tell you a little bit of a story that happened in my house last night. Yesterday was Valentine's Day. I did not have Valentine's Day with my husband. Our wedding anniversary is tomorrow, so we don't usually celebrate Valentine's Day together or do anything for it. But I made plans with some girlfriends of mine that I hadn't seen in quite a long time. And so I went and I had dinner with them, and it was lovely, had a great time. And then came home. And my son is sitting there trying to do math homework. And he's like, I don't understand this, but he's like, but I don't think dad should help me because dad just does the problem and like kind of explains it, but I'm not actually learning it because he's just like going through the problem real quick and like, hey, you have to multiply this, you have to multiply this. But he's like, but I don't actually get it. I don't know how to do the math myself. And I like look at my husband and he's kind of sheepish and he's like, well, yeah. So my number one advice on homework is don't do it for them. So make sure that you're not doing it for them. And unfortunately, it happens more times than you would think. And I'm not looking at you in this Zoom and saying that you're doing this, but it does happen because sometimes you're like, and then the book, they give this example of like this parent being frustrated, like God, her daughter was being so slow typing it and everything. And so she just like kind of shoved her out of the way and like made the corrections on the essay for her. And then the girl got a really good grade in the essay, but wasn't proud of it because she knew like my mom made those corrections. Like I didn't do that myself. That's my mom's grade. And so and sometimes as the parent, I've been guilty of it. Like you go through and you're like, the mistake that they're making, you're like, just do it. Like, this is what you should write. This is the answer. And so that's not what you're supposed to do. They're supposed to figure that out themselves. And so with homework, keep in mind that homework is your child's job, not yours. That said, there's a lot of things that we can do as parents to make the homework situation better. But I'm word of warning, it's not an easy process. This is going to take some time. And I always like using breaks. So next week we have the February break. So using that time to be like, okay, when school starts up again, this is how we're going to do this. And we're changing up how we like want to do homework. I think homework needs to be distraction free. A lot of times kids, they are spending hours and hours and hours on homework, but the amount of time that they're actually spending on homework is much less, but they're so distracted that it's taking so much time. My son is trying to play a video game on his iPad and do his homework at the same time. Well, of course, it's taking forever to do the homework. So I think, and there's a question, in here, Sherrod says, first time high school mom. So this suggestion should be viewed with this background. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on reducing nullifying homework given to students? Would it be naive thought or a possibility the school could explore? Reducing seems to be doable. So this is kind of the point I'm trying to make with this. And so this is why I want you, as much as you can, to get your kid to do their homework without their phone. A lot of their homework is going to be on the computer because they're on Google Classroom, but like doing it without any sort of internet where they're not going on social media and bouncing back and forth. And it may be that you have to be in the room and kind of monitoring them. Again, you're not doing the homework for them, but it may be that you're having to be kind of, depending on your kid, a little bit more heavy guidance on this to make sure that they're doing distraction free, and see how long it actually takes them to do their homework and how much homework they actually have. Most of our classes don't give a lot of homework. They will have math homework, and they probably will have world language homework. Math and world language are the two subject areas where it's been proven that they need practice at home, and that, those skills that they need more additional practice. But even with the world language, math is sometimes going to, obviously be doing math problems. The world language may be like reviewing vocabulary and stuff, as opposed to actually filling out like a worksheet or something like that. Other subject areas probably aren't going to have as much homework. Another question I would have ask your kids, did they have time to complete that homework in class? A lot of times homework is actually classwork that they didn't finish, and the teacher's like, okay, you can finish this for homework. But are they using that class time wisely? and talking to them about, hey, you actually had 20 minutes at the end of your class period to do this. And so this may be something that you like when you're communicating with the teacher, asking them, did they have class time to work on this, and finding out, because I promise you that is pretty typical that they're getting class time to work on it. And a lot of times kids aren't using that class time. So these are questions that like kind of come in and like, so that you are aware of what is actually going on with the homework. If you have a kid, they're in a junior or senior year, and they're one of those super high achieving kids, and they've got 5, 6 AP classes, yeah, they probably legitimately have several, like 3, 4 hours of homework a night, which is why I caution you on letting them sign up for that many AP classes, because it's a very rare student that can handle that. So, when they get into the AP classes are going to have more homework. But again, it's going to depend on the class and what type of homework they're going to have. I used to teach AP. I taught AP European history. And so the homework I gave was, and I would give it like at the beginning of the unit, in this unit, we are reading these chapters. This is going to be your exam date. And I would have it like all laid out on the syllabus. During this like next 3-week time period, you have the several hundred pages to read. Because there's a lot of reading in an AP history class. Some years I gave like study guide questions to go with the reading. Some years I didn't. I kind of went back and forth on that. It kind of depended on the class. And if I felt like they needed more structure, then I would give the study guide questions. But a lot of times with AP classes, if they wait till a couple of days before the test to read those 200 pages, that's a lot. But if they had broken it up and read 15 pages a night over that 3-week period, then it wouldn't have been so much. So those are there's a lot with homework. There's a lot, especially when they get into those upper grades and those upper level classes, where there's this time management expectation that as parents, we need to maybe help guide them through. Another thing I recommend, especially when you're working on like keeping them away from distractions, is having them do homework in a public space that you are near enough to kind of keep an eye on them. If they have a question, like they're confused about something, you're near enough to help them if they needed help. But this kind of depends on the layout of your house. I don't, obviously I'm not in your home. I don't know the layout of your house. The way my house lays out, my dining room table is right next to the kitchen. And so what tended to work well, I'm not convinced. And so this is one of those, like, I should practice what I preach, because I've not been able to successfully convince my son to do this. But with my daughter, it was a much more agreeable child. It worked well for her to sit at the dining room table. She would do her homework. I was in the kitchen making dinner. And if she had a question, I was right there to answer the question. And that worked well. But like I said, I have not convinced my son to do that. So okay. In the chat says, my kids started walking to the Noble Library after school to study and work on her homework. She likes the environment. She's so much more productive and able to work together with her friends. She's all her homework done when I pick her up in the library. That, Vincent, I love that. That is great. And I think that you actually, like, thank you for the segue into my next thought, is ask your kid, like, if you're going to use this February break, and so how to, like, it's homework is a struggle in your house. What I suggest is going into this break and asking them, what do you think will work for you? Like, what is the ideal setup for you? Ask your child, not for you as the parent, but ask your kid, what's going to work for you? And the book gives this example of this girl who was a morning person, and she didn't like to do her homework at night. She was tired from the day, and it was always a struggle. And she was like, let me get up at 4:30 in the morning and I will get my homework done. And the parents kind of didn't believe her, but then she did. She started getting at 4:30 in the morning. And now, according to the book, she's in college, and like that's when she is at her best and able to do that work. And so asking your kids, like, what do you think is going to work for you? When do you feel like you're most sharp? Going to the library after school, will that work? is kind of the ideal situation for them, and and then helping them and accommodating that. So yeah, agreeing like, okay, I'm going to pick you up from the library if that's going to work from you. Or, okay, we'll set your alarm and you can get up early, especially now that school's starting later. Maybe getting up early and doing homework in the morning before school actually might work for them. And so finding out like what's going to work for them, because every kid is different. And so finding out like and helping them, that's kind of like one of our roles as parents through high school, is giving them that supportive environment so that they can learn what works for them and what doesn't work for them, so that when they move on, whether they go to college or they go straight into the career, or like they know like how to function, because these are skills that we have to like learn as adults, right? How do I prepare for my day, and how do I I think we're lucky as adults, we don't have homework as adults, usually, unless we're still in school, but or I guess if you're a teacher, you're still bringing things home to grade, so maybe we do still have our own homework, or if your principal tells you to read a book for a book club. But they're helping them figure out what works and what doesn't work, I think is a great time to do it. And like I said, I love using our school breaks as times to have those conversations, because the pressure's off. You're not having that conversation after school at 5 o'clock when they've got all this work to do and you're tired from your own day. I just think it's much better to have those conversations at a time where the pressure is down. Okay, so let's talk about grades. This is my third question. Grades are an extrinsic rewards for academic performance. As unappealing as they are, we can't take them away. So how do we play the game? And I wrote myself a note to read you a quote. Hold on, let me find it. All right, so praise your child for the effort he put into his assignments, particularly when he encountered those frustrating difficulties that pushed him to the limits of what he thought he could do. So the idea is, as a parent, try not to praise your kid for their grades. Praise them for the effort that they put in. So if you see that they've worked really hard on a project, praise them for like, I saw how hard you worked. I was really proud of you. And it doesn't matter what the grade was. So if they got an A, fabulous, but don't talk about the A and like, you're so proud that they got an A. You're so proud of the effort. Same thing if they got a C, because maybe they like worked really hard and they got that C. And then, at the same time, maybe, this can actually, this is something, backing up, this idea of grades, grades are an extrinsic reward. It's kind of the flawed system that we have to deal with. As a school staff, we've been reading the book for the past couple of years. Well, we read it in through professional development last year. It's the book called Grading for Equity. I'm looking at ahead of me, I have about 9 extra copies of it. So if you were like, I would like to read this book, Grading for Equity, and learn more about it, let me know and you can come and pick up a copy. So the idea with it is how to make grading more equitable and make it so that we have grades be a fair reflection of what the students are learning. So you might see some teachers doing what's called standards-based grading, which is my point is teachers are we know grades are a problem, and how our system has been developed through the past 100 years in education in the United States is not the best system. It has a lot of flaws. It's kind of hard to change it when it's so big. But we are looking and talking about things, just our tomorrow is Thursday, so we have collaboration. And so one of the things, our teachers are doing in collaboration tomorrow is they are with their subject team. So like all of the math 1 teachers or all the English 2 teachers get together and they compare and they look at the grades that they gave students in last semester, first semester grades compared to the previous year, and looking at what commonalities do we have? So are all the English 2 teachers, how many essays are they giving within a grading period? Are they weighting them the same? That sort of thing. Because as a school, our goal is to have it be that there's commonality across a grade, a subject area, so that a kid who has 1 teacher for English 2 is not wildly different from a kid that has this teacher for English 2. So that's what we're working on as a school. I'm just kind of giving you like behind the curtain type of thing and some of the stuff that we work on in terms of grades. But this is a tough, grades are hard because I don't personally believe that they're always a good reflection of what a student actually learns. Sometimes they're a reflection on a student is able to just do what they are told and follow the rules, and like they memorize the right stuff, but did they actually learn the material? Sometimes not. And so it's not, grades don't really reflect that all that well. Which kind of brings me to the next question. It kind of goes along the same lines. How can you support a growth mindset when it comes to your child's report card? And so my advice is kind of don't praise the grades, praise the effort, and ask them and have kind of a conversation with your child about their report card, about how do they feel about it. If they got a C in the class, do they feel like they worked their hardest and like the C is like the best that they could do? And if so, great, praise them, like praise their effort. If they're like, I think I could have done better, okay, help them make a plan and what they're going to change to do better. If, again, this goes back to that homework. Did they not, are they not doing all their homework? So then they're not prepared for the test, which is a common thing in math. Or if they are doing their homework, are they actually really, because especially with math, there's a lot of programs out there that will tell them how to do the problem. And so it's very possible for them to use one of these programs that are out there that tells them how to do the problem. And then they just like, looks like they did the problem, but did they actually do the work to understand it? And a lot of times you have kids that like, okay, yeah, they did all their homework, but did they really do it? Did they do it themselves? So that they actually really understand it. And so having some like hard conversations about that. And again, taking the focus away from the grade and more about, are they learning? Did they try their best? How much effort did they put into that? And focusing the conversation around that, because then I think that shifts that conversation away from just that extrinsic reward and more like, okay, maybe I screwed this up this past grading period. I, didn't manage my time well enough. And so I didn't get all my assignments in, or I got them in, but I had to give like not my best effort because that's all I had time for. And so looking at like, okay, this is how I could manage my time better. And again, that's that idea of learning from our mistakes. I don't know, parents, if you guys have any comments about that and stuff that you've experienced with grades and report cards, and any struggles that you've had with grades. I mean, it's hard. This is a society, and like, we're looking, and like our goal is to get into college and have the best GPA. And so our educational system is based on grades. But it's a very flawed system. And so I think it's important for those of you that aren't in education and maybe aren't as familiar with how flawed it actually is, to have an understanding of kind of some of the pitfalls with this. So like I said, if you're interested in reading this book, Grading for Equity, I have extra copies of it. I'd be more than happy to give you a copy. It's a very enlightening, it's a very good book. But if you're not in education, I don't know, maybe it might be a little bit like, whoa, that's a lot of teacher talk. Maybe it'll be interesting. I don't know. Okay, so kind of wrapping up, this final question is kind of, the name of the book is Grading for Equity. It's by Joe Feldman. So, and it's a very good book. So yeah, if you want a copy, don't just come by. If you can stop by, or just send me an email and I can arrange to leave it up for you in the office. Whatever you want, and works out best. Okay, so my last question is, failure is a gift. That's the theme of this book. Failure is a gift. When was the last time you celebrated one of your own failures with your child? Did you explain what happened and model your own adaptive response? Oh, this is a tough question. And I was thinking, like, when was the last time first off, I had to like, kind of like, when was the last time that I not even like shared it with my child, but really like did the whole reflection process with myself, and like looking at, am I okay? Like, how have I failed? And like, what, and rather than just beat myself up about this. And I think I'm very guilty of this. Like, I totally like this whole concept of teaching our kids that like failure is a gift. I 100% buy, obviously, because I like spent 3 weeks talking about this subject. But me, myself, like I don't know about you guys, it's hard sometimes to struggle with what changes do I need to make? So I'm gonna, this is like, kind of more in like away from like education and career, but like still a little bit of like my personal life, like what I think is a failure. I have been, and I've been pretty public about it. I get up every morning and I exercise. And I've been pretty, for the past several years, like very religious about it. Though coming back from Christmas break, it has been more of a struggle. For the past 6 weeks, it has been more of a struggle. And there's been mornings where I could not get up. This morning, example, I did not get up at 4 a.m. and work out this morning. And so I'm having to like really right now, like think about, okay, what is going on? And rather than just beat myself up about it, like shame on me because I didn't do that and I really should have done that, really examining what's going on with the rest of my life that is making this difficult. And so that's the reflection piece that I think we need to model for our kids. So like with me, I have to look about like, okay, I could not get up this morning. And like, even right now, I don't feel great. I'm very, very tired. But then I look at like yesterday was Valentine's Day, and there was like so much sweets and cookies and so much stuff laying around school. I did not eat anything healthy the entire day. I had a bag of chips, so I had some salt that cut into the amount of cookies that I ate. So I did not eat anything healthy. I went out with friends last night. I had a couple of glasses of wine, and I'm personally at the age now that I was telling my husband, I think I can't drink unless I can sleep it off for 10 hours. Like I'm at that age, I can't do that anymore. And so looking at where like, what's going on, rather than beating myself up, what's going on, so that I can like learn from it and make those adjustments and be adaptable. Where I struggle with, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, what I struggle with is talking to my kids about this. I think my daughter might be more sympathetic if I talk to her about my struggles about working out and like getting up in the morning. She might listen to me, but I swear if I talked to my 13-year-old son about this, he would look at me like I am an alien from another planet. I'm like, Mom, I don't care. Like, why are you talking to me about this? And so I guess that's where I struggle with. And I don't know if you guys have had the same experience where, and maybe that's just, I'm making that up in my mind. Maybe he would listen to me and like see it as like, okay, that's I'm hearing you, and like be interested in it. But I just, like, in my mind, I'm like, Nathan's not going to care about me working out. He thinks I'm dumb for doing that anyway. So I don't know. Do you guys, any parents, have you shared a mistake that you've made with your child, and how did it go? Did they care? That's my question. Did they care? Vincent, yes, all the time. Vincent, what are you sharing? Shared pretty much the reaction you got. I think that maybe that's like our own ego, and we have to like, they might be like, why are you talking to me about this crazy mom, dad? But at the same time, I think we have to kind of get over our own ego and like be okay with them not having a sympathetic reaction, because they might still be listening. I think that's the goal, right? That, you know, that they might still be like, because we're modeling behavior. And so even though they might not be interested in it and like, why are you talking to me about this? When they have that same, or they have their own like personal struggle with making a mistake and like figuring out how to move on from it, we're modeling that behavior. So I think that that's the key. So Vincent says, my challenges at work and personal, my daughters are supportive and provide encouragement that I gave them my best effort to learn and move on. That's great. And I think daughters are actually probably more sympathetic and like will like lend a more sympathetic ear. I think sons sometimes, especially teenage boys, they're like, why are you discussing this with me? Maybe that might just be my son, but he's like always like has that look on his face like, why are you talking to me, mom? So Hale says yes, but he doesn't always know how to respond, because I think he may still think that mom is sometimes superwoman. I do way too much for my own good. Absolutely. I think we all do. And I think that well, you know, I think that maybe is a different, you know, an interesting conversation as a mom and as women. You know, what are we showing our sons? And should we be a little bit more careful so that they have realistic expectations of what women can do that we can't do at all, and that we do have our own struggles? But that could be a whole separate topic. But yeah. I share my struggle about my relationship with my friend. My kids understand my feelings and reflect on their own relationship with their own friends. I think it's a great conversation. I think that, Lan, thank you. I think that's beautiful. I think that, yeah, like talking about, you know, struggles you might have with friends, and modeling that. And so that you're teaching them how to have healthy relationships. I had to, you know, and I think sometimes you have to be really careful when you talk about relationship stuff and you talk about, you know, your struggles that you might have with your spouse or an ex spouse that you may have. But I think being honest, but I guess that can be kind of a difficult conversation too, because, you know, you don't want to like, because it could be that, you know, like their other parent. But my daughter recently was having relationship struggles with her boyfriend. And so, but I shared, you know, some stuff because she felt like her boyfriend wasn't being sympathetic and responding in the way that she wanted to, you know, and I, you know, told her about sometimes like I felt the same way about, you know, that her dad and like how he was responding to me. And, you know, but I used it as an example of like how I addressed it and what I said to him and how we like worked through it, and that he listened to me and got better. So like my message to her was like, okay, you have to like stand up for yourself and say this is what you need, and then give them a chance to do it. And it worked out pretty well. But I think, you know, talking about relationships and your own personal relationships, and how you struggle through it and what you do and how you address things is, I think, a great thing to talk about and to model. Okay, let's wrap this up. Thank you guys for your sharing, and thank you for listening to me. Thank you for having this conversation for the past 3 weeks about this book. I hope you've enjoyed it. And again, shoot me an email if you want a copy of Grading for Equity, and then we can figure out how to get it to you. And thank you. So I want you guys have a wonderful February break. We won't meet next week because it will be February break. And I hopefully will be laying around and being very lazy at this time next Wednesday. When we come back from break, our next meeting is on March 1st. And what I'm going to do, hopefully you heard from your kids that we did a school-wide lesson on bullying and cyberbullying last Friday. It seems like the kids really enjoyed it, and like they thought it was very worthwhile. The teachers thought it was very worthwhile. We've had some really positive responses for doing that school-wide lesson. So I'm going to actually share with you guys the presentation that was given to the students. So you can see exactly what we shared with the students. And that's what we're going to do on the 1st. But until then, have a very great great day. And I promise you, I will be working out in the morning tomorrow. Don't worry, I will. Thank you. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your day. Okay. Bye-bye.